Welcome to the BV-TV network, coming from the UK studios of BizVision. I'm your host, Malcolm Gallagher. Now, one of the sheer delights of my job is meeting people who are obvious self-starters, who are persistent in finding their North Star, and who now want to pass on their experience to others. My guest today is just one such person. He may have stumbled into the fitness industry, but sheer persistence saw him become a master trainer and now a gym owner. But I want to talk to him about his work in helping others find their strengths through problem solving and continuous improvement. Oh, and he's got a podcast called ValueVerse to help achieve that. So let's go visit Kawan Karadaghi. Hello, Kawan.
Malcolm, thank you so much for having me on. Love the work that you're doing. How's it going?
Oh, hey, okay over here. But whereabouts are you in the US?
So I'm actually in sunny San Diego here next to the beach, just to rub it in a tiny bit. And I moved here a couple of years ago and I've loved it ever since. It's a wonderful place to be.
So every morning you get up, wander down to the beach, have a coffee, do about an hour's work that day and then back again. Is that right? Is that the life over there?
It's something like that. I mean, I can't complain. It's very nice. I can see the harbor from my window there, so I'm very lucky and fortunate for that.
Yeah, it is, and congratulations on having achieved that. Now, viewers and listeners, my BV-TV chat with Kawan will be in our usual BV-TV format of 3 parts. First, I'll ask him what he thinks people need to do in order to find their strengths of problem solving and continuous improvement. Surely we all can't be winners. And in part 2, I'll ask him about his free PDF, that's a free download document, 3 Things I Learned. And in part 3, I'll ask him what he aims to achieve with his ValueVerse podcast. But first, Kawan, can you briefly tell us about your journey in life so far and what your vision for the future for yourself is?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. I appreciate that. My journey has been one of sort of a quest of self-discovery and just really having conversations with myself and finding an honest place to do so. Early on in life, I wasn't doing a lot, and I decided at one point that I needed to level up my life there and to, just become better daily. And you could say it was kind of ingrained or, whatever that may be, sort of a gift, but you got to work on the gifts that you have and the strengths that are given to you. And for me, I saw that in fitness, of getting stronger, of getting better, which kind of is the journey in life. If you think about it, every day you learn, you grow, and that never really stops. So for me, that's kind of what fitness is and was. It was an opportunity for me to go to school and learn about my body and myself and what improvement really looked like. So I embarked on this journey of discovering what that was. And I don't think to this day I've stopped learning from that. I recommend it to all people that just to start small there and to find what you like and what brings you joy. So I think the future for that for me looks like just always moving up the progression ladder, is challenging myself and doing the things that kind of make me feel uncomfortable, and because that's kind of where growth is, and that's how you move to the next level. If you're comfortable, it means you're kind of on one level there and you're kind of happy where you are, and there's nothing wrong with that. You just want to always challenge yourself and push yourself. So it's just being a learner, and I think that's the most important trait to have.
And don't you think in a way that you owe it to yourself and to your family just to push yourself? Otherwise, complacency easily sets in, doesn't it?
What a great point, great question. That's kind of the reason what made me look within is, mom and dad, they're both, very smart. My dad was as well, and intelligent, hardworking. So I looked at them and I looked at myself and, my friends, family, and I kind of put it as a responsibility on myself to want that for me. Right. And to say that this is kind of something I should do for myself if I feel capable of doing it. If I have higher standards, then I should live up to those higher standards. And starting small on that and saying, okay, this is my grand goal. This is what I want to do. How do I achieve this on daily things that I can do towards that? And I think that's the most important thing, is giving small actionable steps that you can find efficacy in doing,
Yeah, excellent. Yeah. Now let's move into part one. I love your goal of continuous improvement. It's a personal passion of mine. Sometimes, though, I have to look around me and see that if others are following, and I'm not making changes just for making changes' sake. It has to be relevant improvement. What do you think people need to do in order to find their strengths of problem solving and continuous improvement? And how do you help them?
It's great. I think the first step is to have that honest conversation with yourself, and to look in the mirror and to say, hey, what am I good at? What am I not great at? And just being honest about it. That's kind of the first thing I had to do, was say, what do I want? What am I doing to achieve that? And how am I going to get there? And it was about, just being real with that and saying, all right, this is the things that I want. How do I do it? So, I was faced with a couple of crises, a financial crisis, where I was forced to look at those things. And it was painful to do, Malcolm. It was hard for me to look at myself and say, this is where you are. You're 30, 31 years old. Not much has been happening. You've done some cool things, but, not really. And that's it was hard, but that's what led me to really that true introspection of just putting yourself down somewhere and sitting down with yourself and saying, this is what I should do. I always recommend to people is surround yourself with people that push you to further heights, that challenge your thinking. There's great personality tests out there. Clifton Strengths Finder is something that helped me find my way. And I always recommend, that you can never go wrong reading a good book and just saying, hey, this is something that stands out. And if it brings you it, if you don't like it, move on to the next one. And just do little small things, to find your way. And believe it or not, over time, it adds up.
Yeah. Just picking up on a couple of things you said there, or one in particular, some time ago, I just got drained by having the wrong people around me. I don't say sycophants, but everything was negative, So overnight, I got rid of all those contacts, all those people. Got rid of them, That's why they call me Malcolm No Friends these days. But never mind. I got rid of them, and I tell you what, I do not feel better. I don't need that drag. And did you ever find that necessary to do?
Yeah, the one of the big things for me was a geographic change, where I had to move away from all my friends and family in East Coast to go to the West Coast. And it was tough. I've been living with my mom at the time for such a long time, and seeing my friends on a daily or weekly basis. It was one of the hardest things I had to do, because I left there with just 2 pieces of luggage with all my stuff in there. And my mom shoved a bunch of pots and pans in there. And, it did pay off, because I ended up using them, believe it or not. Mom always knows.
Sounds like a modern day wagon train.
That's exactly what it was. And I got there, and it was one of the best things that happened, because I hung out with this guy that his name's George. He just helped me tremendously in looking at fitness, and he was extremely fit. And that's kind of what got my start, was a mentor that just took an interest in me. And it's helped me tremendously in that regard of changing my environment, changing my friends. I still keep in touch with a lot of them, but that initially was what gave me that new environment. They say that, an acorn, it can only grow in accordance to its environment. You got to have the right sunlight, the right soil, the right water, irrigation, and then that acorn grows to its fullest potential. So I think the environment and the people around that environment is key to that growth.
Yeah, I quite agree. And as we're speaking here in Northumberland, I'm looking out the window at a beautiful oak tree. That was a little acorn at one time. Kawan, before we move to part 2, let me just remind everyone of your URL, your website, which I want them to go to. Now, can you take this down, listener, viewers, because you can see it on the screen behind me. But for listeners, let me read it out. It's all the W's, TheValueVerse.com. TheValueVerse.com. Now, that's where you'll find, obviously, Kawan's podcast details, and it's got lots of episodes, and I've delved into a few, and it's also the opportunity, though, for you to download a one-pager called 3 Things I Learned in Opening a Business from the Ground Up. Just a one-pager, but those 3 things are very, very salient and to the point. So that page contains a goldmine of sensible advice, in my mind. Just look for where it says on ValueVerse.com, just look for where it says download PDF. Right. Part 2, come on, let's stay with that one page of free download. I know people will get it later and can reflect upon it, but take us through those 3 lessons and how you suggest we should apply them today.
Yeah. So, the first lesson on there, I think, there's so many things I learned in that entire process of doing, of opening the business, of getting to that place where I felt, that I was doing something, because it was a learning curve, to say the least. And, I think one of the things is that's most important is to always keep track of those things you're doing. For me, one of the most important things I learned was the adding value to the business partners, right? So number one was letting the best idea win, right? Which is what I wrote there, and that's having sort of a idea, meritocracy, as the author of the book Principles states. And there were so many times, Malcolm, where in an environment that's constantly changing, right? You open a gym. It's from 0 members. You're learning so many things on a daily basis that, there was one day I just it collapsed from exhaustion. I passed out on my bed, and I slept for 10 hours, woke up and said, what the heck happened? And, it was so much. So in that process of taking away some of the things, I noticed as a team, Dan, David, my business partners, and I, we would always have to make decisions. We would always have to do so many things on a daily basis. And there was ideas that I didn't understand. There was things that were outside of me, that I was so primitive in my thinking and how I was wired in my previous career, which was just a master trainer. And I had my schedule, I had my thing. It was very structured. So for me to come out of that structure and to go into a just free-flowing environment was very difficult. So I noticed that sometimes, you want to get your opinion, you want to have your views on certain things, but it's not about what you think and what you may think is the only way. It's the best idea that can help progression and forwardness in the business. And for me, that was something that I learned earlier on was you got to bench your ego. You got to be able to take that aside and say, okay, this is what we need to do. This is the right thing, as long as, nobody's getting hurt, obviously, and you have your standards of procedure there, but this is what we need to kind of do. And how do you get to this idea? And that was the big takeaway as number one. I think that was the most important thing there, just to point out that sometimes, we're all wired very, very differently. Yeah. And valuing other people's perspectives is one of the most beautiful things you can do, because they just see things differently than you, and that's not a bad thing. And I don't want anybody or everybody to be like me, because it would be a very, very boring world out there, So I learned so much from people and the way that they view life. That was the number one, was let the best idea win. The second one was always about results. In fitness, it's never rang so true that I learned everything I needed to learn the first couple months of working out. If you weren't changing physically, if you weren't making progress, if you weren't getting stronger, there was no results. There was no forward movement, and it was unforgiving in that fact. And in business, it's kind of the same thing. You got to bring results to the table. You got to bring tangible items and say, this is the things that we've done. This is how we're going to do better. And this is how I'm going to do better at those things, and then deliver. right? So when you deliver on them, they say, okay, this guy, he knows what he's doing. This guy or girl knows what they're doing. And that's something they can trust. It's tangible, right? So
Yeah.
Everybody can talk about the things they do. Everybody can hypothesize, but if we can't put it into action and get a tangible end result, it doesn't mean much, right? So the third one, lastly, was, I think I mentioned in the beginning, was adding constant value. We get stuck in our ways when we think that we've made it. Like you said earlier, we get a little complacent, and adding value, consistently adding value in an organization, in your relationships, whatever that looks like, whether it be tending to something or doing something nice for somebody, or just always being there to offer your services, either psychological, mental, physical, intellectual property, whatever the case may be. Add value, always add value. And I don't think you'll ever go wrong with doing that. I think you'll always make it to places if you can tell people and show people what you can do for them.
Yeah, excellent. Now, I want to show people what we can do for them as well. Download this PDF. Now, I know what usually happens because I'm just as bad. I download the PDF, I print it out, and then I put it in my in tray. Don't do that. I've got an idea for you, viewers and listeners, and it works for me. So, if it can work for me, it can work for you. Take the piece of the PDF, fold it up a few times, and then put it into your pocket or wallet. And it's in 3 parts. Take it out once or twice a day, read one of the 3 parts, fold it back up again. That's called chunking. And what you're going to do then is to reflect on each of those 3 parts. Put it into your own thoughts, your own thinking there. You'll learn faster. It will be much more value to you. And it's far better than putting it into your in tray, isn't it? So try that. My final part 3, your very successful podcast, Kawan, is called ValueVerse, which focuses on stories around mastery, growth, and success. Now, I've got to say this, and I'll probably get shut down, but too many podcasts are simply vanity things. But I see that yours is certainly not. You're passionate about its aims. Talk us through those aims and how you're crafting the ValueVerse to deliver on them.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And I love the chunking bit. We do the same thing in exercise. So, you just got to chunk things down. So really nice. I never thought about it that way. That's awesome. And, the ValueVerse podcast that I created was to sort of give back the things that I learned in the process. And it took me a while to get to a place of understanding what that looked like, because the pandemic had happened and I didn't know what I was doing with my free time. And I stumbled upon social media, and I said, well, how can I keep adding value to an audience? And the podcasting came about, and I procrastinated for a good year on it, was to say, well, you learned all this stuff. Why not have a space where you can talk about stuff and add value? So value is just that. Verse is the metaverse universe of value, of benefit. So it's a space to learn and benefit from. And for me, I bring on experts such as yourself, and I'd love to collaborate as well with you, Malcolm, is people that have their journeys, their stories, how they got to where they got to, and what are some of the takeaways and learning things that they learned or experienced along the way, and most importantly, it's about connecting with those guests and having the audience connect with that conversation, with that space. I think a big thing that needs to happen more is human connection and learning from each other and conversation. And mastery is learning from these experts and what they did and what that looks like. Mastery is no easy feat, and it takes days and days of practice, and it takes months and years. And eventually, on the other side of it is that tutelage, that authority, that credibility. And that's my message to anybody there is if you want to learn something, you want to do something, commit yourself to the process, as hard as it is. And a great book on that is Mastery by Robert Greene, my favorite book. The second element of value versus growth, you want to be growing consistently, learning every day. And whether that's books, knowledge, accumulation, talking to people, up-leveling different things, exercise, constantly grow, constantly push yourself to grow, whether, how uncomfortable it is. Start small and ease in, lean into it, chunk it down, like you said, do one little thing, and you'll be surprised at where you end up. And success, lastly, is what is success? What does that really mean for everyone, right? You have your financial component, you have your relationships, you have your family. And I think success is there's a great quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson on that. And it's being able to leave the world a little bit better, to have a small impact or even a large impact on the world. And, just being a person that is more of a fountain than a drain, right? Is to be a person that adds value. So successful, success has so many different meanings, but I think delving into that topic of what that looks like is important, so people can choose their own success.
And I think there's another one. I probably got this wrong, the quotation, but it's stuck in the back of my mind, Kawan, that a journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, and it's the first couple of steps that are the hardest. And we do this thing where, to add to that quote, is we look back and we say, well, I remember I was 26, 27, and I said, you're too old to go exercise. It's you're not going to be a professional bodybuilder. And I said, well, yeah, maybe not, but it would have been great to start at 15. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is today, right? Yeah. And to add to your quote, I think what you do today is what matters. It's greatness, as I've heard, is in the next 5 minutes. It's in the next thing you can do today, and it can be super small, but it's a step. Yeah. And then you can take another step tomorrow, and it just starts with just one, and that's how it builds up. That's how it compounds over time.
Do you suggest that you need some form of measurement? I like to sort of look back at the end of the day when I'm in bed taking my blood pressure, just to see how there's a couple of things I write down on what I've done today that's moved me forward a little. It's not a measure. Maybe I should have a measure. What's your thoughts on that?
I think that's great. I think anything that you measure, you can manage. I was doing yearly measurements where I would look at what I did in the last year. I wrote down all of my accomplishments, achievements, and I said, okay, has it been good for you? Okay, yes. Then I can truthfully answer that I have been growing, right? So that you're not looking back and saying, oh, what the heck happened? The second thing, so I've done mainly now is I've broken it down into daily things. So I journal. At the beginning of the day, I write down my 3 goals. What are my 3 goals today? And what do I need to do that are most important? And I write them down, and then I go out to achieve them. Sometimes I don't, and I leave them for the next day, and I go after it that day. And I think measuring that is a way to do it. You can do weekly, quarterly, but it may be something like, go to the gym 3 days a week, or go for walks 2 days a week, and having a measure on that is important. So for me, I do it via journaling. I have a whiteboard I look at where I kind of write down some of the things that I need to do, and I check them off as I go, and I say, okay, you're making progress, you're doing good, keep going. And then that way, that gives you an encouragement to say, I am moving forward, right? So I think the journaling daily, the monthly assessments is good. Looking back, say, what did I do this month? What did I achieve? And that way you can have something your future self will thank you for.
Yeah, I quite agree. I've got my whiteboard ready for this evening. This is true. This is my A3 border with the real fancy technique clips on the top. But I do my mind mapping, and I'm there, and I feel that I've got something I've downloaded. Otherwise it just buzzes around and everything. So whatever you're going to do, viewers and listeners, have some sort of structure, as Kawan said. Now, I said at the introduction to this interview how much I enjoy meeting self-starters, but I also enjoy meeting people who are passionate about giving back. putting back into the pot, as it's often called, grateful for what they've achieved and anxious to help others do so too. I trust you found my guest, Kawan Karadaghi, one of those who give back and do it authentically. Thanks, Kawan, for a great interview.
Malcolm, thank you so much for having on. I love the content you're putting out. I love the show. It's been so awesome to have this space to share with you. And thank you so much.